cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we come from a planet where men play with children's toys. I'm your host, Pineapple Salad Superfan Bob Mackey. This is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever who is here with me today.
Henry Gilbert, and I'm still weirded out by first cousins kissing.
Ooh, I am too, and today's episode is the Robotech episode, Farewell, Big Brother.
The SDF-1 experiences a rare moment of calm in the ongoing struggle with the Zentradi over control of the Robotech battle fortress.
All those words mean something, folks. We'll explain them soon. But yes, we're jumping into Robotech, which is actually Macross and two other things, but it's also very, very important in the history of Western folks liking anime.
Robotech is as complicated as it is important to American anime fans specifically. And this was also chosen by one of our premium patrons, Chris Duenas, aka Sega Odd. Okay, but Chris, thanks for picking this one out. Actually, their avatar is a Robotech, a guy in a Robotech hat. So, and by that I mean the helmet Rick Hunter wears in Robotech. So obviously a big fan. And I grew up as a fan of anime and definitely knew of Robotech, but as a person born in 1982, I was 3 when it first aired, so I actually didn't see it when it was new.
This is part of the early 80s stuff that people associate with the 80s. Even as an 80s kid, I was way too young for this. I was way too young for this and things like G.I. Joe and He-Man. But yeah, I think this is really like, if you're a Gen Xer, you know Robotech. If you're an elder millennial like us, it's the thing you sort of remembered coming out again in the early 2000s on DVD, and you're like, oh, I know what this is supposed to be, but this is the version you got.
Yeah, when I was a kid in the late 80s, you would still see some Robotech toys in the store, but it was just like, I bought He-Man toys, but they weren't making new He-Man cartoons in 88 or 89. I was just at the end of that run, and same with Robotech as well, which is Macross, and I think that's going to be a difficult thing for us. For some fans, some fans prefer Robotech, and some fans prefer Macross, and it is a very controversial subject for those fans.
I agree, and I saw some people that were wondering why we did this, and I totally understand where you're coming from. When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a GameStop, and we were selling Robotech stuff, and that was like the height of my super anime nerd fandom. I was reviewing anime online, DVDs, and my stance was, I'm not saying if you're anti-Robotech, this is your stance, but my stance was, well, this is actually Macross, and why would you even care about this? And Macross is the original version, and you should watch that instead. But you know what? In 1985, if you were watching this, you were way ahead of the game. Like, it was a miracle this came here in as intact as it was. And I feel like there is value in that alone, that the fact that it made it here relatively unscathed, and that it gave a lot of people, an entire generation, their first real exposure to quote-unquote serious anime.
For us millennial anime fans, me and you, Bob, this type of thing it feels antiquated because we grew up when, now I'm jealous of kids who get to have streaming next day simulcasts of anime.
Yeah, for $5 you have 200 series at your fingertips completely.
But comparatively, Gen X anime fans were jealous of us for growing up with the option of uncut, subtitled anime that we could get for the low price of $30
You
for an
children
episode.
get the sub and the dub on one disc?
So yeah, if you were of the age of when Robotech was all you got, it was either this or the comparatively much more cut up stuff like Voltron. Robotech was quite awesome by comparison, I would say. Also, to explain like why I was definitely a subs over dubs jerk off.
Oh,
totally
me too.
Was. And
I still kind of am.
and I still am too. But Carl Masak, the late executive producer of Robotech and chief localizer on it, he was a villain to me in the 90s as an anime fan who preferred subs. And And researching this has given me a more complete picture of the late Carl Masek. I still have issues with him, which I'll get into this here, but I also think that he doesn't get enough credit for what he did for North American anime fans like us. I feel like on balance, he should be seen as a hero, not a villain.
And even though this is only 35 years ago this show aired, I feel like this was the Wild West of IP negotiations between America and Japan, and that we'll get into it, but just like the way this was sold to America in many different forms and across many different media properties like toys and games and books and TV shows, it just was like no one was really, there was no internet, so there was no way to instantly contact people. So a lot of stuff was lost in translation. A lot of stuff was just, sold before anyone knew it was sold. So it was a very different era, and it wasn't even that long ago.
And the core conceit of Robotech and Macross, I always say Macross, but it is Macross.
It is Macross?
Macross. In either of those cases, in the original 36 episodes, what was attractive about it in 1982 in Japan, in 1985 in America, and today is still attractive, which is it has amazing animation for great designs of mecha robots fighting each other, that it also mixes with very well executed soap opera stories and also idol music. Like, it kind of is a 4-quadrant thing that hits like boys, girls, men, and women. It's a really well-crafted machine, Macross and Robotech. What I love about original Robotech, the first 36 episodes of it, is mainly what I like about Macross. And I don't really like the things that are Robotech that aren't Macross. And I love Macross.
What surprised me upon watching this was the dubbed anime I watched was in the late 90s, like Dragon Ball Z, and they would put in a lot of extra music. They would cut out a lot of slower stuff. In this episode, I was surprised with the confidence they had. Like, we're going to have a scene in which this person's friend visits them in the hospital, and they're very tired from their job, and they're going to talk about how hard their job is. Like, this would not be on DuckTales. This would not be on, like, He-Man. This is a very down-to-earth scene about human problems that they're airing ostensibly for children. In any other case, they would just cut those scenes out, like all robot action. Let's just cut all this stuff out and make these 2 episodes into 1 episode. Like, they had a lot of confidence in kind of bringing this over. I mean, I know later they would make a lot of cuts and make a lot of edits, but kind of giving you the best version of this they could, or the most authentic version they could.
Well, that was something I never understood about it until prepping for this show, because I had never watched back-to-back a Robotech episode and then a Macross episode, because I watched Robotech 18 and then I watched Macross episode 18. I was like, this barely has any cuts. This almost, like, there's a couple lines I was like, well, they definitely changed that line, right? And then I watched the sub. I'm like, not really. No, it's basically the same. Like, some character names are changed, though not even that many of those either. Like, Misa becomes Lisa and Karu becomes Rick, but that's kind of it. Like, there's not a lot of changes. They make much bolder changes in later Robotech.
For sure, yeah.
But for the first 36 episodes of the Macross saga, I'd say 80% the same.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, what if I was a parent of a Gen Xer in 1985? My kid was watching this. I was just kind of sitting down with them, it was on in the background, and there's a scene of, like, 2 adult women having a heart-to-heart about how to, like, land a man. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm like, this is not like any of the other trash that's on TV. What even is this show? Like, what is the show even about?
Yeah, and Chris Duenas' pick of Farewell Big Brother / also known as Pineapple Salad in the Macross version, this is one of the most impactful episodes of the show that really shows you the emotional range that Macross is operating on that really did separate it from previous robot shows like Go Lion or Mazinger Z or other robot shows like that. This had a much more adult, like, this actually kind of reminds me of what we're going through now with like Star Wars or superhero movies, of just that I think in Japan they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. Like, I'm an otaku who wants to see robots fighting each other, but give me adult themes so I don't feel like a baby for buying these toys.
And I think in terms of the West, this is a very landmark episode of children's programming.
Which it was.
This is in the West, this was marketed towards a child audience as a children's show. And they use the word death and die, and a character dies. Spoilers. But there's a lot of finality to that. Even 10 years later, they would avoid saying die and death. Like in the Dragon Ball. Exactly. In the Dragon Ball Z dub, famously, there's no death, there's another dimension. Of course, that's fairly accurate in terms of the Dragon Ball universe, but I mean, it's still a death.
Before we get into the history, my personal history with the show was that I knew Robotech and Macross as things that I'd heard of as an anime fan, but it was not my entry point into anime in either version. But in early 1999, as the Toonami block was going gangbusters, they licensed the entire 65 episode run of Robotech, and they played it all. And I watched all the Macross episodes with me and my friends, and in a pre-Wikipedia world, we took bets on which girl Rick would end up with, Min-Mei or Lisa, and I picked Min-Mei, and spoilers for Robotech, folks, but in episode 35, they seem to show that Rick will end up with Min-Mei. I celebrated on that day. It was a Friday because, it was the fifth it was divisible by 5, so it aired on a Friday. When it came to the next Monday, and he leaves her for Lisa at the end of that episode, I had to eat some humble pie that day in middle school.
And plenty of crow. Like, what year was that on Toonami? Was
1999.
Okay, wow.
Early.
I have no memories of Robotech being on Toonami. Weird.
I then fell off once the next season started. That was not Macross. I then was like, nah. Done with this. I know this isn't real. This isn't the real stuff. The 36 episodes that are Macross, that's real. But then I did get a bit into Macross, which I like of classic adult mecha shows. Gundam is forever my favorite, but I really do like Macross quite a lot. And by association, to a degree, Robotech as well.
Mm-hmm. I have no real history with this show, by the way. It was sort of something I kind of always knew about it. And then, selling the toys and the new DVDs when I was working on a mall job, I had more familiarity with it, and my manager at the time knew a lot about Robotech. But again, I was sort of the anime chauvinist where it's just like, well, yeah, you should watch the real version instead.
You know what you're not seeing here?
But I did see Macross Plus. I really enjoyed that.
That's the best Macross.
Yeah, but I never ever dipped into the original version of this ever, and I know it's available. I don't know at what point it was made available, but I do respect it a lot, and especially in America, that version, what it did for anime at the time, and it's very responsible, along with some other shows, with really getting people into the world of anime and what it could do and how it differed from American cartoons.
Well, so why don't we get into the history then of Robotech and Macross? It is a complicated one, to be sure, that is the very bedrock of North American anime fandom. So, Bob, what if I were to tell you that animation is very expensive, right?
I've been told.
Well, what if, instead of making your own animation, you found animation made in a country that wasn't yours and then just talked over it with non-union cheap voice actors?
I'm listening.
Well, that was the case of anime for 20 or 30 years with shows like Astro Boy, Speed Racer, and Star Blazers.
Gigantor.
And Gigantor, yeah. All taking popular shows from Japan, but really changing them in some versions a lot to work in an American audience. And that was all that the poor weebs of America had to do with anime until the 80s. Like, that's all you had were shows like you were lucky to get Star Blazers. Boy, oh boy.
If you ever see photos of conventions, anime conventions in America from the early 80s, you're like, you guys are dressed up, but you had like 3 shows that you all watched. what do you even talk about here?
Do you watch Robotech? No, I watch Star Blazers. Okay.
Well, Voltron isn't invented yet, so I'm going home.
Well, actually, I guess the conversations will be easy because all you'd have to do is watch all 3 of those. But then when would you watch them? Only off TV? Like, you didn't even have a VHS tape to tape them. You just had to hope your local area was syndicating it.
One of those anime nerds would be rich enough to have a VCR, one of those top-loading ones.
So, in that era of cheap localization, there were a lot of companies, and one of the up-and-comers in the 70s was Harmony Gold, a company that also worked in real estate for some reason, but licensed foreign films and then kind of cheaply dubbed them over for American consumption. It's a trashy B-movie type world that you're working in, but hey, it's profitable. But you're not going to make your own stuff. Meanwhile, in the early 1980s, the hottest thing going for the new generation in the bubble era of Japan was mecha series that put serious themes into the once toyetic and kiddie genre of people piloting robots. 1979's Mobile Suit Gundam changed everything and really grew it up. Like, if you think of what the impact that Evangelion had on our generation, double that, and I think you have an idea of what Gundam felt like for anime fan, for otaku in 1979.
I think before that, I have not really seen any of these shows. Before that, mecha anime was things like Giant Robo.
Yeah.
Where it would be like a little kid and he would have a big robot that would have adventures and stuff like that. But there were never any big serious themes. It was very much for children.
Yeah, like Mazinger Z, the creation, one of the first guy pilots a robot shows created by Go Nagai. Like it was very much for a children's audience. I'm not saying it's a bad show. It actually looks pretty fun, but it wasn't serious and about war and emotions like Mobile Suit Gundam was. In a post-Gundam world, which also was a post-Star Wars world, a lot of animators were trying to get in on that business in the early 80s, and that included a relatively new animation house called Studio New, N-U-E. Now, New, led by relative newcomer to the company, Shoji Kawamori, they conceptualized a fantastic mecha series that was about space opera battles between Earth's fighter pilots and evil space aliens, but the actual secret of the show was that it was a soap opera about interpersonal drama on both sides of the war, with love triangles and heartache and tragedy touching all parts of it. And that show would be called Megaload and then changed into Macross.
Megaload, boy.
For real, Megaload.
I'm glad they changed that.
Well, in 82, it made sense. It was the usual, like, wouldn't it be fun to have an English name for this thing? So they called it Mega Road / Mega Load.
Interesting. Mega Road is less offensive.
But instead they went with Macross, partially because it was a play on the word Macbeth.
Really? I was wondering where that name came from.
And so Studio New, though, they need funding for this. They can't just do it alone. First, they work with a distributor named Big West, but they weren't really into funding it the entire way because they didn't want it. They wanted it to be more kiddie, which Studio New was not going for. So instead, New works with a company called Tatsunoko, which, as lots of fans should know, they did the series Gotcha Man and all the characters that were in the Tatsunoko versus Capcom.
They fought, I mean, I really have most Tatsunoko awareness via that game. Like, oh, those are all the same. Oh, they made that too. Okay.
They are a major studio, and so they were going to pay for the show to be 23 episodes long. They're like, this is the most we can pay for it. By the third airing, it was such a breakout, massive hit in Japan. They're like, shit, we gotta add 13 more episodes to this. So they actually, what was going to be episode 23 becomes episode 27, and then the rest 9 episodes are more story they put in. That's why between 27 and 28 there is a 2-year Shippuden break in the story.
In my research for this, I discovered that even Japanese companies were very much toy first. Like, we want to sell toys, so come to us with a pitch that can sell toys. And I don't know if we got that from them or we were all on the same page for that. But when we did our big episode of What a Cartoon, that was why there's a different a different robot in every episode, because it was like, we can sell toys with this series, and here's how we'll sell the toys. So it was very toyetic.
The design by Shoji Kawamori of the VF-1 Valkyrie is so cool. It's such a cool mecha because it transforms, which only late in the first Gundam did it transform, but it's not really transforming well. Meanwhile, the VF-1 can not only be in full fighter plane mode and also a full mecha mode, but it also has an in-between kind of like ostrich mode where it's like 2 legs out of an airplane. It looks so cool, the VF-1. But the show had so much crossover ability. Super Defense Fortress Macross, which is what the full name of it was, in 1982, not only did it have toys you could sell to boys in the VF-1 Valkyrie, and also men in the brand new model kit area, but also you had a J-pop idol on the show, Min-Mei, played by a pop star of the time, who she would sing original songs on it that you could then sell as the Macross soundtrack.
Oh boy, I really want to know if that's a new idea for that time, because it's something that happens all the time now, ever since then.
Well, definitely for anime shows, long before Macross, they had pop singers that would sing the OPs, but opening themes when I say OPs. But I don't know if they were cast on the show to sing songs within the show. I would bet similar things had happened before Macross, but Min-Mei was huge, a huge deal.
I don't know how it happened then, but I know in modern times, and that includes like the 80s and 90s, if you are a voice actor and a woman, you are trained to sing and act. So you can sing the opening song. You can also be in the show, sort of like Megumi Hiyashibara, who was Lena Inverse on Slayers.
She's the greatest. I love her.
And she sung She sings all the Slayer's opening and ending songs, I think.
And she's also Rey on Evangelion and
Yeah.
sings the most of the EDs on that. And she was Ranma girl type and sang on that show too. On top of the pop idol and the mecha, they also could really get in soap opera elements with the love triangle between Minmay, lead character Hikaru, and Misa. And on top of that, you also had Star Trek-style sci-fi multiculturalism aboard the ship. When you watch Robotech or Macross and you see the people on the captaining the ship, and it's all a mix of men and women of different ethnicities, you're like, well, this is Star Trek.
Oh, for sure.
These are Star Trek fans that made this show.
And the Zentradi are sort of like Klingons, right?
Yes, yeah. Also in how they become your friends. Some of them become your friends.
The good ones.
Macross, huge hit in Japan, 1982. Gigantic hit, printing money, but also there's kind of an argument over who owns it because Studio New is like, we own this. Tatsunoko is like, we paid for this. We own this. Like everybody starts fighting over the hit. Eventually, it will be settled in court that Studio New owns Macross, not Tatsunoko. But that's not what happens at first in 1984. In 1984, Tatsunoko, they had negotiated multiple of their shows like Gatchaman to be localized in America. So they're shopping around Macross as well. It comes to a company called Harmony Gold. The company Harmony Gold talks to one of the very few American anime experts that you could find in the 80s, early 80s, Carl Masek, who was a would-be screenwriter living in Hollywood who also dealt in animation cells, which included Japanese animation cells. And he was the guy who told them, Macross is a huge hit. You should get this. And then Harmony Gold, being the lazy people they are, they're like, well, why don't you just localize it for us? Sounds like you know what the show is.
Can't someone else do it?
So in their usual non-union cheap way, Carl Masek is hired by Harmony Gold to localize Robotech. And in an age when you changed every character's name and you made sure characters didn't die who did die in the Japanese version, and you got rid of any adult themes for childish consumption, Carl Masek did none of those things. It was a giant sea change in American anime localization, and for that I still thank Carl Masek for. But here's the difficult thing, Bob, with Macross. It's only 36 episodes. Now, in America, if you're trying to sell your first-run syndication package to networks around the country, you got to have 65 episodes.
Because you need 13 weeks of daily episodes outside of weekends.
They need 29 new episodes. Fortunately, in the 2 years after Macross came out in Japan, multiple series inspired by Macross, though not exactly, but not sequels to Macross, had come out. And they kind of had their pick of the litter. So they licensed 2 other shows, Southern Cross and Mosspedia, both of which have futuristic mecha themes, but are not at all in the Macross universe.
Is the same mecha designer on those, or
in some cases, yes, not Shoji Kawamori, but some cases, and then in other cases they just look similar because the Valkyrie was so cool and such a huge hit that they just copied it or were inspired by it. Carl Masek has the difficult task of having the show called Robotech, which they have to call Robotech because another company was selling imported Macross toys under the name Robotech a year before them.
It's a terrible name, by the way.
So they're just stuck with it. And not only does he have to do that, but he has to, after 36 episodes of Macross, get 2 other series and somehow make it seem like they are sequels and a continuation of the story of Macross, which it isn't. In neither case. So in the case of Southern Cross, they say, oh, the lead woman in this is actually the daughter of a character from part 1. And then in Mosspedia, they're like, and after the end of that, then the aliens invaded again and made everybody slaves. And that's how they have a new status quo.
Boy.
But in the case of the Macross saga, as the first 36 episodes of Robotech are considered, those are fairly the same. Like they don't change a ton other than, of course, if there's blood, they're not going to put blood on a kid's show. But I think the show Harmony Gold really benefited from it being first run syndication and not having to worry about standards and practices on a network level.
Yeah, I was surprised about what they could get away with in terms of not just like explicit visuals or swear words, but just this seems very adult. This seems very I mean, there are giant robots flying around. It's not the most mature thing ever, but it's just like, oh yeah, these very, adult scenes of characters having emotions and not like, fun adventures with Skeletor and He-Man and robots transforming. It's just like, wow, they're just going to have a conversation in the scene. All right.
comparatively, from the time of like Thundercats or Transformers or He-Man or She-Ra, they weren't having stories like this in comparative boys shows.
Especially a story that was told over the course of dozens of episodes. I mean, even that was sort of just like, ooh, you shouldn't do that. We need to show these up. We need to be able to show these episodes in any order we want to. Like, that is, what if someone tunes in, like, and they miss an episode? They just don't want to watch the show again. But it's like, no, people are only learning now in like the Netflix era that like, no, people like when things are one big story. Like, they love that.
But in 1985, not as sure of a thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, for Carl Masak, it's a major point of contention how he is remembered by anime weebs like us, especially.
As the devil.
And I see him as really two things. He is a man who brought new exposure to anime in America, and especially through the quality of the localizations he oversaw. But oppositely, he is also a man who bastardized the art of anime and chopped up a bunch of shit to make it seem like it was Macross when it wasn't. Though my biggest defense of Masak, I think he was a innocent man pushed to make trash in some cases by a very greedy corporation. I can't imagine anyone else in 1984 Hollywood who would have been given that job that would have done a better job than him.
I want to say that all the anime labels that we grew up with in the 90s that are now defunct, like ADV Films and Central Park Media and Media Blasters and all those people, I want to say that if they were not inspired by Robotech, Carl showed them this was possible to bring these things over relatively unscathed.
The biggest changes were some character names, like lead character Rick Hunter is Hikaru in Japan, and Lisa Hayes is Misa Hayes, which honestly, like, I'd make that change to Lisa. And also a shocking amount of the story is unchanged, including this stuff. The only content edits are things you're like, well, yeah, you're not going to get to have blood on a show. So they cut some blood from this episode. And also they got rid of an interracial kiss or two between Claudia and Roy.
Seeing an interracial relationship in 1985, I mean, people
never would happen.
People still tug their collars over letting that happen in modern media. So like, I am completely ignorant of Robotech, but seeing that they are a couple was just like, wow, for 1985, Jesus, wow.
And you'd only get away with that if you could just say like, well, we can't edit it out. Like, you got to have it stick. Like, no American animation company would have been allowed to create that in the 80s. But if a Japanese company makes that and decides to keep it, then you can't change it. The relationship between Claudia and Roy would be way too much work. Sometimes I wonder how much the laziness of Harmony Gold overshadowed their artistic integrity. But in either case, keeping the relationship between Claudia and Roy would have been too hard to cut out. And they didn't do that, though they did cut a kiss out. I mean, too, like, you see the character Claudia, I say this as an outsider to Japan and as a non-Japanese person, but there are very few major black characters in anime history, and some better not remembered than others of the ones they did draw. But Claudia is a real standout, especially for her era. When you think of how, like, I love Akira Toriyama and Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
But I only need to say Mr. Popo to let you know how different Claudia is from that guy.
Yeah. And I believe in the series Nadia by Gainax, they were going to make Nadia a more African-looking character with darker skin, but ultimately they opted to make her sort of a tan Shinji from Evangelion.
Yes.
So like even in like, I don't know, 5 years later, there was still anxiety over, can there be a black character in this?
And I think Claudia owes a lot to Nichelle Nichols' character, Uhura, from Star Trek, for sure. But that also, I think that's admirable, too, that it shows you that Gene Roddenberry's vision on Star Trek extended all, like, across continents, across languages. Just the power of seeing Uhura on the deck of the Enterprise inspired people to create characters like Claudia.
And there was an interracial kiss on that show, too, right, in the 60s.
Which the censors hated as well then, too. I would think that you could get away with interracial couples now on a kid's animation, though I might be surprised. Yeah, so it's easy to hate on Carl Masak now for hacking together a bunch of anime shows and pretending they're the same, but you do need to doppel yourself into 1985.
I'm there. I'm 3 years old. This sucks.
And at a time when you're watching He-Man and Transformers, where those shows have no linearity, no continuity, and they're just about robots banging into each other, here you have a show that has true continuity to it, an ongoing story, and has lightly edited Japanese animation that also is hella violent and is about war and death, and like the nuclear holocaust of Earth happens in this show. And they don't cut it for Japan. They do They do cut some of the more nuclear holocaust imagery from the death of Earth, but the Earth is fucking dead in this show. And they keep that in Robotech. So Robotech's universal appeal to kids all across America leads it to being a much bigger hit than Harmony Gold expected, which also shows you how poorly they planned like the merchandising of it, because one of the toys they couldn't sell was one of the main VF1 Valkyrie. They couldn't sell it because Hasbro beat them to it.
They repainted it or whatever, right?
Yeah, so as you'd learn from watching the Transformers Toys That Made Us on Netflix, which is really good, one of the Hasbro's things was just like, there's no rhyme or reason to Transformer toys. If we can license a toy model from Japan and call it a Transformer, we will. So long before Robotech came into being, Hasbro licensed the Macross model for the Valkyrie and sold it as the character Jetfire. So they couldn't even sell Robotech toys of the main toy from the show. Or when they tried to sell it, it couldn't transform because Transformers had the rights to that. It was pretty bad luck for them. Robotech, I'll give another compliment to Carl Masak, an incredibly quality voice cast, which included then newcomer Cam Clark, who we all know as Leonardo.
It's true. Or Liquid Snake.
Or Kaneda from Akira in Carl Masak's later dub of Akira.
Also, I listened to recently the Rob Paulson podcast Talkin' Tunes with Cam Clark. It's a great look into the world of anime dubbing in the 80s. And it's funny that Rob Paulson still doesn't really understand what anime is.
Come on.
Even though it's 2018, he's just like these weird cartoons. But it's a fun look into how unprofessional that whole era was.
That makes me laugh too. That I think that shows you like almost classicness of Rob Paulson. That he's like, he never had to earn his anime dollars. He had been a big deal. He never needed to stoop to non-union anime.
He never entered the anime industry.
I mean, Cam Clark fucking rules. And also that he's like, in the 90s, he was an out gay guy.
That's true, yeah.
Which... But what actor did that, And he's the voice of Leonardo, man. Also voiced Yellow Dancer in the later Robotech episodes of the first year, which is a gender queer character who both lives as a man and a woman, and Cam Clark plays her well in that. And this episode in particular, too, is an example of how it, like, just imagine in 1985, you're used to watching your Transformers or your reruns of Flintstones. And here's an episode of a show where a lead character on the show is killed on screen and you watch him die and he's not coming back.
Imagine if you're watching DuckTales and Launchpad McQuack just falls over.
And they're just like, no, he's dead. And then people just sob about it for the rest of the episode.
I honestly don't know how they got away with this. It just seems, I mean, again.
I think people just weren't it was so much later in the episodes that the syndication package people just didn't care, I would guess.
Yeah, I've worked in companies where no one's paying attention, that you can get away with so much when no one's paying attention. But yeah, again, over a decade later, we watched the Spider-Man cartoon and Uncle Ben dies, the thing that everyone knows about Spider-Man, but they can't even say it. They have to just dance around it as swiftly as possible and then just move away from it as fast as possible. But here they're like, dead. He's dead. He died. My brother is dead.
He lost too much blood. Yeah. He's dead. In the surprise success of Robotech, Harmony Gold is ready to cash in fast. They got to move. And in fact, they even get contacted by garbage masters at Canon Films to cobble together a shitty Robotech movie from an OVA called Megazone, though they also cut in sequences from the second season of the second saga of Robotech, which looks completely different and takes you out of it entirely. But Carl had his assignment from Canon Films, which was make some shit and make it fast. Though interestingly, Carl did pay the people who made Megazone to make a new, happier ending for them.
That's right, yeah.
Which would then be put on the Megazone OVA. But one thing they couldn't get for the movie, which would have made way more sense, was the Macross movie Do You Remember Love, which, just as an aside, overseen by Shoji Kawamori along with Noboru Ishiguro, they directed Macross Do You Remember Love, and it is still one of the most showy, amazingly animated things I have ever seen. The final explosion of missiles in the last big fight in that movie is so insane that I'm like, how did a human draw this? How was this drawn? in an age of where if you even had a computer, I'm sure you did not have a computer in 84. How did you draw this? It's insane. But you couldn't license that in America because by that point, Studio New was very clear that they would not license shit to Harmony Gold. Well, Harmony Gold was like, well, Tatsunoko signed a really bad deal with us that we basically own the rights to Macross in America. So the gigantic mess began at that point.
Yeah, Do You Remember Love is an amazing looking movie. And again, it's like no computers, all human blood, sweat, and tears and paints went into all of that.
Another crazy thing about that movie is that it has lip sync, which most anime does not have. You hire the voice actor after you animate, and then they do their best to match up the voice with the mouth movements.
And they still, anime still doesn't have lip sync. And I remember when I got the Akira, I'm going to say it like that, the Akira DVD, the new one with the new dub, there was a featurette that was a Japanese TV special or the Japanese featurette where it's like, this is called lip sync and you won't believe how it works. Just like, we are all spoiled by lip sync in America, but Japan does not prioritize that. You know what? It doesn't really matter.
Though it does matter when you're watching Do You Remember Love and seeing the long music video action sequence.
Yes.
Seeing Min-May's mouth move to the movements of her song is really cool.
Makes it much harder to dub, too.
Oh, yeah. To this date in the United States, Do You Remember Love has never truly had an official release.
Oh, you're right.
Still can't get it. You can watch it all on YouTube for free, but much to Studio News' chagrin, they still can't actually sell Macross things in America without negotiating with Harmony Gold.
Oh my God.
And that's kind of what has happened since the success of this show of Robotech. Studio New started making shows called Macross that continued in that series, but weren't like sequels with Min-May or Rick Hunter in it.
There was one recently in 2016, Macross Delta. That was the last one they made.
Yeah, which we never get to see officially in America. While meanwhile, Harmony Gold, thanks to their license with Tatsunoko, which they even sued Tatsunoko to be like, no, we own this. They're the only people who get to sell Macross things in America and more stuff from Robotech. They tried to start a new show called Robotech 2, The Sentinels. They created 3 episodes of it, and then according to Carl Masek, it was that the value of the yen shifted so much they couldn't afford to make it with Tatsunoko in Japan anymore. I think that Harmony Gold was not going to spend the money needed to make 65 episodes of original animation.
No way. No way.
Even if they could be sure they'd get a profit, there's no way Harmony Gold would pay it up front.
Even in 85 or 86, millions and millions and millions of dollars.
It is quite a lot. So after those 3 episodes were made, basically Robotech went on to not have any new animation for a long time. They did have video games. They had canceled video games like Crystal Dreams for the N64, which we never got.
That's when I first really knew about Robotech. It was like, what is Robotech? And I look it up on the internet like, oh, it's this thing I never saw. And then again, when I was working at the GameStop, I think it was a 2002 PS2 game. There's a Robotech game.
Yes.
And it was just like, wow, I guess it was like, okay, Gen X is finally cashing in on this nostalgia.
The passionate fans of Robotech without new actual animation called Robotech, they've had to settle for comics, toys, tabletop role-playing games, and video games to continue their love, which is good, but they're being totally used by Harmony Gold, which has only become a more slimy institution in the 30 years since the show first debuted. For example, they said they were going to start a new series of Robotech with Funimation, and then after a year, they're like, we suspend this license, and we had creative differences. It's all Funimation's fault. Harmony Gold tries to make a deal for a new video game. They suspend the license on that. They're like, no. They sign up for new comic book deals. Harmony Gold then decides, no, they're not going to do it. And they try to start a Kickstarter, and then to do a pilot for a new Robotech. The Kickstarter doesn't get $500,000. They're like, nah, not doing that either. Currently, Harmony Gold says they're going to make a live-action Robotech movie with Sony Pictures. I'd like to see them try.
It was fun to go, so I watched a lot of videos about Robotech, and it was fun to see just all of the ancillary products, like all of the books and comics and stuff.
So fucking much.
And it was kind of like not fun to see Americans being like, well, this is what anime people look like. Just like, ooh, you don't get it. You don't get it.
all these, well, in their defense, a lot of those artists were trained to just draw Superman to look the way he looked for 40 years.
And they were work for hire. They didn't care.
So they're like, see what big eyes look like on Minmay. They're like, ew, like this. Apparently, with the situation they have now with Harmony Gold is that some would say they're holding the series hostage until they're bought out by somebody bigger. And the only promise of things improving for Robotech and Macross fans in the United States is that 2021 is when the license will expire, and probably Tatsunoko will not extend that license with them.
I'm surprised Crunchyroll hasn't bought them or something like that. They're so huge. I think they just passed 20 million subscribers.
Well, I think Harmony Gold really, when I say hostage, I really do think they're like, yeah, we got the Macross license, not going to be cheap. What do you get? Well, and there's also the it's alleged that they have some allegations of tax fraud in their past and running out on money. So, I mean, they probably need to be paid a lot of money to pay off all of those debts. Meanwhile, Carl Masek, he left Harmony Gold in 1987 to found his own localization publishing company, Streamline Pictures, which is even more controversial, I'd say, Harmony Gold, because it was the first company to release in America, thanks to the VHS and rental boom, uncut anime in America. You'd never seen uncut anime like it before. And when you go from nothing to uncut Fist of the North Star, that is mind-blowing for an animation nerd in the 80s.
It's like it killed people.
And at the start, Streamline Pictures had its pick of the litter. Akira, Fist of the North Star, some of the first Ghibli films until Hayao Miyazaki was like, these guys suck.
Lupin stuff too?
The Wolf.
Oh, the Wolf, yes. Not the same as Arsène Lupin.
Certainly
different character.
And Masek, along with his partners, was at the forefront of that. But that's also when he truly became a very hated figure in the anime industry, because his films were only released in dubs. You could not, even if you wanted to buy the subbed version of his films, they were not available at the start. Eventually they would be, but not in the late 80s.
The big controversy I know of is Nazca being released as Warriors of the Wind.
And hacked to bits.
Yeah.
Hacked to bits, which is just... And I think that's kind of Masek's problem too, that in the first stuff of the Macross saga, he barely cuts anything. But I think as time went on, he got a little more confident in his abilities as a localizer. So he edited out more stuff or made bigger changes, just feeling like, no, this will make it more palatable. I'll add more lines here.
And I think he went on to be the writer of children's programs like Cops and things like that.
He was a co-creator of the show Cops.
Which
yes.
I remember, and I think that was anime. It was like original
the opening
anime.
was hella anime.
Yeah.
But I mean, Streamline Pictures also introduced Americans to a lot of anime they wouldn't have seen otherwise in the 80s.
Oh yeah, everyone of our era definitely rented that Akira VHS for sure.
To me, Kaneda will always be Cam Clark. It'll be those voices. Like, it feels weird to hear their Japanese voices, even though they're all, unless you're Cam Clark, they're all acted better in Japanese. I will never talk bad about Cam Clark.
I can't not hear Leonardo when he talks.
Isn't that great? It's Leonardo's everywhere. And now, honestly, the anger of subs over dubs feels a little silly thanks to dual language tracks and DVDs.
And streaming,
And streaming. I mean, the DVDs made it an ancient argument 20 years ago, really. But now it's even older, and I'm definitely not as mad at the Masek and his style of localization that I was in the mid-90s. Masek passed away of a heart attack, April 17th, 2010. Aww. So, you don't want to be mad at a dead guy. I feel bad for him. And again, he was given a very difficult task in localizing Robotech.
Yeah, and I think the face of Western anime fandom would be very different without him. Absolutely.
It's hard to overstate how important he is. I mean, would somebody else have done it if he didn't do it? Maybe, but I don't know. He kind of, by opening that doorway, I think it gave confidence to his competitors to even come up. Like, without the success of Robotech and then also the success of Streamline Pictures, would companies like Manga Entertainment, ADV, and Animego gotten the funding or gotten to be in Blockbuster Video without the success that Carl had? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at things at best, what he did was prove there was an audience for all of this stuff. So, that's great.
And of course, Harmony Gold, giant pile of assholes holding
a pile of them.
They need to just go away and let go of Macross and Robotech and let somebody who isn't a patent troll out to let them have it.
Focus on real estate. That's what you do best.
the alien and evil Chiron too. They're out to capture Lisa because they're evil through and through.
Robotech to the rescue.
But with hunters racing to the scene and Roy is by his side, first they'll save friend Lisa, then send the aliens for a ride.
Here's my secret plan to save Lisa.
Robotech to the rescue.
Robotech action figures and vehicles sold separately, new from Irwin.
We won!
I'll get you yet, Rick Hunter.
Robotech will be right back after these messages from me, Henry Gilbert.
And me, Bob Mackey. I'm hungry for pineapples.
And hey, thanks for listening to this week's episode, and I really appreciate our patron for picking out such a cool and controversial series as Robotech.
People actually die. One person.
And it was a lot more people die later. But yeah, this was a fun podcast to do, and we hope you guys enjoyed. And if you enjoy it, why don't you listen to next week's episode, the Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving episode, an Indecent Thanksgiving Proposal, right now. All it'll cost you is signing up at the Talking Simpsons Network, patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
That's right. If you sign up at the $5 level, you'll get every episode a week ahead of time and ad-free. And the same goes for Talking Simpsons, our other podcast, the flagship podcast of our network.
Not only that, but there's a ton of exclusives on there, like interviews with cool folks who have worked on The Simpsons, like Bill Morrison, Mark Kirkland, Bill Oakley, who we just did a live podcast with as well. Not to mention our limited series, which are exclusive just for Patreon subscribers. You can listen to all the episodes of Talking Critic, as well as the first season of Talking Futurama, only if you're a $5 and up patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
Yeah, right there. Just counting the miniseries, that's 36 podcast episodes that are exclusive to Patreon, but there's so much more. There's a backload of monthly community podcasts. We talked about the interviews, of course, deleted scene specials, season wrap-ups. A lot is going on. We do so much for the patrons. We appreciate their support so much. And if you just give $5 a month, you'll support our podcasting lifestyles, our meager podcasting lifestyles, and we really appreciate any support you can give us at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And not just that, but at the $10 level, we just opened up a brand new movie podcast. We used to, at the $10 premium level, you'd get access to a video, and all those old videos are still there. But coming up now, each month we're going to be doing a What a Cartoon movie podcast that is one of 4 choices voted on by the community that'll only be available for $10 and up patrons. And this month's looks like it's going to be Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Oh boy, I'm excited. And apparently Fathom Events is going to be bringing it out in the theaters again.
Because it turned 25 this year. Can you believe it?
I don't like that at one bit, but I do like seeing Batman in the theater. I never have seen it in the theater.
I got to see it in the theater because a babysitter took me to it.
It had a tiny release, and I wanted to see it so bad.
I saw it. Me, my brother, and my babysitter were the only people in that small theater. But 25 years old, animated by TMS, so you get to hear us really geek out about TMS again.
But you'll love it.
But yeah, that's only for $10 and up patrons. So if you want to maybe bump up your patronage or sign up at that level, you'll not only get all the great videos we did in the last 18 months, but also our monthly movie podcast for What a Cartoon. Also, if you're a fan of anime, may I suggest Verve? Verve is a streaming service that not only has a ton of anime from Crunchyroll, but also a ton of other animation, including original stuff from Cartoon Hangover and Nick Splat with a ton of 90s classics from Nickelodeon.
And I believe they now have part of the High Dive library, which has some exclusive stuff like Pat Labor. So if you like robots, you'll love Cop Robots. I know I do. I'm not being sarcastic. I love Pat Labor. And
you can get a 30-day free trial of Verve if you head over to verve.co/WAC. That's vrv.co/WAC. Sign up for a 30-day free trial on the What a Cartoon podcast, and a little bit of money gets kicked back to your buddies Henry and Bob too. And now let's get some more protoculture with Robotech.
Robotech, the continuing epic saga of a valiant band of young freedom fighters risking everything to save Earth from alien domination. With spectacular action,
Brace for collision!
high-flying adventure,
Let's get on with it.
and human drama. Thrill to the Robotech experience.
Robotech, weekdays at 3:30 p.m. here on WAXA TV 40.
All right, the episode itself. After all that, the episode itself, episode 18, Farewell, Big Brother. It's funny to go back to this too, that I think at the end of the day, I like Macross more than Robotech. And what I like about these Robotech episodes is the Shoji Kawamori and his work on Macross. When I've seen clips from Carl Masak's vision of what Robotech would be without Kawamori in Studio New, I'm like, I don't like this as much. I need robots shooting thousands of missiles into the sky. I gotta see that.
And I have a really strong personal connection to 80s ass anime, just the way things look, the way characters have their hair all poofy and fun.
I love
just
that.
Because that's what every Nintendo game looked like in terms of like the instruction book art and the box art, and that's like all the anime I grew up with on Nickelodeon, just like very, very 80s stuff, because it was the 80s. So just like I have a very strong attachment, like, oh, I like how this looks. I don't know why, but I just like it so much.
Not just giant hair, but also like big shoulder pads. Yeah. Just all the 80s and stuff. But there's a warmth to it too. And also seeing the versions of this episode on Amazon are oogly. Like there's better transfers of it out there than the ones you'll find on Prime now. So yeah, this episode itself starts out, it's really helpful that both in Japanese and English, they have a narrator to tell you, hey, if this is your first one, this is what happened last week. And they needed to tell us that Rick Hunter is injured and that he's in the hospital after an operation gone wrong.
Yes, apparently the Zentradi, which are the Klingons, attacked the Robotech battle fortress.
I'll tell you what I like about the Zentradi is that they are giant. Like it's not just that.
Oh, I didn't get that at all because they're not next to humans.
They're not in the same scene together. Yes. Zentradi and humans look kind of similar, but they're actually like 100 feet tall.
Wow, I didn't know this. Damn.
But if Zentradi if they want to infiltrate humans, they have to, or Micronians as they call humans, the Zentradi have to then make themselves smaller, which I believe is irreversible.
I had a feeling the hooligans in this episode, knowing nothing about this, they were Zentradi in disguise.
Yes,
just based on the dialogue and stuff.
Well, and so the Zentradi, what's interesting too about them is that they are disgusted by, look, it's called Robotech in the show, but fuck that. I'm not calling it that. It's protoculture. They're grossed out by protoculture, which means a mixing of the sexes and love and kissing and music.
Oh, really? Okay.
They call it protoculture, and they are disgusted by it. Like when they see Min-Mei singing, the big action scene where Min-Mei sings over a giant battle in Do You Remember Love, which also happened in Macross, that's because they are so distracted by hearing music that they can't do anything. So they just get blown up.
They're Klingon and they're Vulcan too. It's like these human emotions are strange to me.
Yes, yeah. But they've been fighting the Zentradi. The SDF Macross, it only exists because it crash landed on Earth as a distraction for Earth for an oncoming Zentradi invasion, but Earth was able to reuse the technology and use it to fight back. But so Rick Hunter, aka Hikaru, is hurt from the previous episode. He's in the hospital. He's told he has just a little bump on the noggin, but he can't go flying. And here comes Lisa to visit him.
I came to say that I'm sorry.
You came up here to apologize? To apologize for what, for Pete's sake?
For your being in here. We both know that it was my instructions that were responsible for your being seriously injured.
Lisa, you weren't responsible. I have no one to blame for this but myself. I'm here because I made a mistake in judgment and for no other reason, okay?
Thanks for your generosity.
What's happened to that old command confidence? This isn't like you at all.
No, Lieutenant Hunter, I don't suppose it is at that. Anyway, I said what I came to say. Now I have to get back to my duties on the bridge. Get well.
Thanks, Lisa. Will you come see me again?
I don't think so, Lieutenant. I'll be too busy.
It's interesting when she gives their rank there too, because there's like, Lisa, you outrank him by quite a lot, and yet it feels almost sexist. And she's just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just a silly woman. It's like, you are his boss's 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 boss.
She's also being kind of tsundere, where she's like, it's not like I like you or anything. I'm just visiting you as my duty.
Well, she is the older woman as well, Lisa. Yeah. Lisa/Misa is.
But again, this is a scene in a children's cartoon in 1985 in America, and it is about complex emotions, people hiding their true feelings. It's not meant to teach you anything. It's just like these two people have a strange connection. What is it? Let's figure it out.
And also that this is a very important episode because it really starts building up the relationship between Lisa and Rick and the love triangle between them, especially having characters say out loud to her, like, no, you're in love with this guy. Like, you're in love with Rick. Like, that's what your problem is. There's also, right before this, a line that really struck me now where he says, like, did you come to bury Caesar? Which I'm like, what the fuck is it? Like, on a certain level, it felt like showing off of just like, well, Rick Hunter, like boyhood's flying ace, would not know it just seems weird for him to make a Shakespeare reference. So I think it worked on two levels. One, it was Masek trying to show off of just like, well, you can make Shakespeare references. But also, I think it was that it's not that it would be seen as wrong, but a woman bringing flowers to a man in the hospital doesn't seem like a regular thing in American customs. You know?
It's defying gender roles in 1985.
That's why it's seen as so weird too. I've seen this actually in Japanese mixed martial arts. It's seen as normal for you to give a fighter flowers is like, congratulations, a big bouquet of flowers. But when you give it to a non-Japanese, like a Western fighter, they're like, what is this gay shit? I don't want these flowers. Fuck you. But it's seen as a compliment here. So I think him commenting on the flowers is their way of dealing with how weird it might look.
Okay.
I really like Lisa's curled hair, by the way, too. Like her, like the way it kind of like cinnamon roll curls on the other side of her shoulder.
She's very luxurious, like thick.
And as she heads back to the bridge, and we have a moment of girl talk between Claudia and Lisa, which I really like because it does show them as professionals, but also they're people who can talk about their love lives too.
It doesn't pass the Bechdel test, but this is very weird for a 1985 children's cartoon. So I'll keep saying that. It's two women talking about their relationship, their adult relationships.
It's very simple, Lisa. If you're in love with him, go after him with everything you've got. But I couldn't. Lisa, you're in love with Rick Hunter. Isn't that true? What should I do, Claudia? Be a woman. Stop moping and smile more often. Captain?
I want to be informed the moment we have completed supply loading operations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It has already been so ordered, Captain Global.
Is there anything else that I should know?
Nothing of any particular importance, Captain. I was just briefing Commander Hayes on military procedures of quite a different nature when you arrived on the bridge.
Well, it's unlikely we'll require any hand-to-hand combat expertise, but carry on.
You could tell it was written by a man because it's a woman telling another woman to smile more often.
Yeah, that line isn't in Macross, but that exchange is basically the same in it. But I'm not into, it feels very outdated to be like, you should smile more, be friendly. Now, I don't like how ridiculous Cold War Global's voice is, or his accent, but I actually kind of like that he's like, I know, it was girl talk. You're talking about your relationships. That's cool.
It was very clever the way she covered it up. It was just all winky. I liked it a lot.
When he winks back of just like, I know what you're talking about. But also, speaking of Nadia Bob, now you see where they got the design for
Captain Nemo?
For Captain Nemo.
Yeah,
yes.
oh my God, you're right. Yes, I was going to bring that up, but I wasn't sure. Did something come before this with a guy with like a shaded face?
I mean, it's definitely a stock thing. Macross didn't invent it, but I mean, the colors of his suit are the same. Like, and Gynax was one of their earliest gigs was helping animate on this show.
Really? Okay.
So, and Gynax is open about their influence and drawing from it. Actually, in the Otaku no video, which I just watched again, which is kind of a history of 80s anime in a way and otaku culture, they do a very good job of showing what a huge impact Macross is.
Interesting. There is another Gynax reference in this episode.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, also, there's a scene in Otaku no video that takes place where people are lined up to see Do You Remember Love in the theater.
Like, I have not seen this in 18 years. I need to watch it again.
The Blu-ray is pretty good. But yeah, Global talking with that. I like Claudia and her having girl talk and telling her, like, you know, you got to go from like me and Roy. This also sets up early Claudia and Roy's relationship in this episode, which you kind of need. Unfortunately, one problem with this dub versus the sub, and I understand it, but they don't have a lot of budget to do multiple songs. When Min-Mei sings in Macross, she sings a lot of different songs. In Robotech, they have two songs and one that's repeated way more than the other. So that's the song that plays again on the radio.
I mean, I kind of don't blame them because localizing a song is a lot more work and your voice actor might not be able to sing. There's a lot of video games and anime where it's like, it's the dub, but you know what? We're not going to localize this song. That's a lot of work.
That's why they didn't even dub the video game Tokyo Mirage Sessions because it's just all songs. So.
And if you're playing it, you want to hear the J-pop.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have it anyway. Symbolically, I really like how they put Lisa's flowers next to the radio, which plays Minmei's song.
Okay, yeah.
So they're already in direct competition with each other. Also, I'll give them a plus to the localization that they turned Senpai into Big Brother, which is, I don't know, but as close as I checked in the Macross when he constantly calls him Senpai.
It's something that's impossible to translate accurately because nobody uses those kind of terms in English in real life all the time.
Now, I wonder if there are some viewers that did think they were related. I'm just like, oh, he keeps calling him Big Brother.
You know what? I did until now. I
are
thought
not.
they were related.
He's more of his father figure. Roy Fokker was a good friend of Rick's father, and so now he's lost his father again.
In that case, that's a weird translation that I would not have kept in. I guess if he was his brother, would be like Nissan or whatever.
Yes, but it's senpai in the in the
I guess they went for
Japanese.
like sort of like a direct.
Hey, big bro, what's
yeah.
up, big bro? Like that kind. I guess I get that.
There's no real way to do it elegantly, I guess, but you could have fooled me.
That's again, and now in localization, you just keep those honorifics because that's what the weebs want.
We know what senpais are and kohais.
We know all about it. We never learned the language of Japanese, but we know the honorifics. In my first viewing of it on Toonami, the character of Max was my favorite because I was a nerdy kid named Max too in high school.
With blue hair?
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't imagine Minmei's very much interested in a washout like me.
Well, you could try introducing her to a certified flying ace like myself, Lieutenant.
How about a punch in the nose?
Easy there, Tiger. I'm sure Ben didn't mean anything by it.
Huh?
Come on, Ace, before you make his condition any worse. Right this way. Glad to see you're okay, kid.
Hey, has Minmei been here yet?
Looks like she brought some real nice flowers.
Minmei hasn't been here at all. My room decorations came from Commander Hayes.
So what's wrong with that?
Come on, will ya?
We'll see you later.
That was nice of the lieutenant to bring flowers, wasn't it? Huh? Skipper. Well, get well soon, sir.
A lot of the early anime dub acting that I love, where it's like every mouth flap needs a sound.
That's Dan Warren as Roy there. I really like his voice acting too. He's just so cool and calm. It really fits real well for
Did he go
Roy.
on to do more voice acting, or what's his story?
He did characters like, he's still alive, actually.
Cool, good.
At 66. He voiced characters like Joggy in the Streamlined Fist of the North Star one. And, he was, I don't watch Bleach, so I don't know this character. Byakuya. Yeah, Byakuya. He dubbed him. And also was
that late in time.
And he was Yang Newman in Macross Plus in the dub of that.
Oh, cool.
But he's really good as Roy. Like Roy needs to be the cool big brother of all the viewers out there. And it's kind of you also though get to see here what is the core problem in their love triangle. Rick is into Minmei. Minmei kind of doesn't care about Rick. Lisa does care about Rick, and Rick doesn't notice.
Ain't that always the way, though?
Yeah. Lisa should just moved on. Lisa is the fucking captain of the SDF-1. She could get any guy she wanted.
She has her pick of the litter. But yeah, like Roy dies in this episode. He's the cool big brother. Now that I think about it, it reminds me a lot of the show Gurren Lagann, where the very Roy-style, cool, proactive character dies.
I have a feeling it's not unintentional. I would think.
Sorry to spoil that for you, but it's been 12 years, so.
Macross was such a huge hit. I can't see that not being an intentional homage or at least inspiration from it. Now, as a media-savvy adult, I can see how obvious it is that Roy's about to die in this episode because he was never a lead character in the show, and there are multiple scenes of just him, and when I see that in any anime, I'm just like, why are we getting all this backstory to this guy who's never mattered before? Probably so it'll matter more when they get killed off at the end of this. I've seen that in multiple animes lately, and I'm just like, boy, this is pretty obvious here. And that's how I felt with watching it now. Now, if I'd seen it in 85, I think it would have still hit me as a shock. But you do get to spend a lot of time with Roy, including him meeting up with his girlfriend.
You're right. I was hoping to track her down for a friend of mine who could use some cheering up.
Well, you came to the right place because I happen to know that she's working on a motion picture.
Great.
You'll find her on the set every day. Now, can we get to the personal part of the conversation, Commander Fokker?
Sure. Exactly how personal did you want me to get?
Dinner tonight.
You got it, kid. But I'm only coming if you promise to make your famous pineapple salad. Right now, I gotta get going. I'll see you later. About 7, okay?
Sure, Commander Fokker. Dinner tonight, if we're lucky, breakfast.
Getting a little sexy.
That also feels like something I was shocked they got away with in an 85 kids cartoon.
Yeah.
She's implying premarital sex.
Premarital bed sleeping.
How dare they? But though it also, it's nice that Claudia's going to make dinner for him, but it also feels like a very gendered thing of like, well, only if you make me dinner.
Only if you do labor.
Yep. We're both professionals on this ship and equal, but you're making me dinner. Our pineapple salad, I've never had pineapple salad. It just looks
seems like fruit salad. Yeah. I guess yesterday I saw on Twitter, yesterday was Men Make Dinner Day. And Andy Richter retweeted it. It's like, if you're a man, don't know how to cook dinner, you're an asshole. It's like, this is the one day I cook dinner.
Apparently, I didn't know this, but according to the internet, that pineapples after this episode in the Macross world were used as negative foreshadowing. If somebody mentions pineapples or somebody wants to eat something with pineapples, that they are then in danger of death.
I thought you were going to say after this episode, pineapples took off in Japan and they cost $1,000 and they're square.
I mean, it certainly would have been exotic over. I mean,
what was the Ghibli movie where they buy a pineapple?
Yeah, in Only Yesterday.
Only Yesterday. And the entire family's like, well, what do we do with this pineapple?
Well, how do we eat this thing? And they were all just like kind of unenthused by it. I mean, I think that partially was like the Hawaiian craze that Japan, and Japan still loves Hawaii. But also, speaking of characters being ethnicities, did you know Min-Mei was Chinese, Bob?
Based on her dress and name, yes.
She is. They go so hard on her being Chinese in this show. But again, it's supposed to be a melting pot. Like Roy is supposed to be a Danish American character as well. Like that's why he has the last name Fuker, not Fucker, folks.
Is it Fokker in Japanese as well?
F-O umlaut K-K-E-R.
Okay, wow, interesting. And is the captain supposed to be Russian or something? Like what is his deal in Japan? Okay.
He's global in Japan, not global.
Oh, interesting. So they stuck pretty close when they could.
It's very close. Yeah, again, Masek and his team only really take the hatchet to it after Macross is over. Which again, I would say for most people, that if you love Robotech, I have a feeling you actually love Macross. But
I'm surprised Min-Mei wasn't like Carol or Deborah or something like that.
Well, I do think multiple times in the show, there is English writing in the background. This has a lot of English writing compared to some other anime.
We see Disco in this episode.
You see Disco. You see Min-Mei written in the background too at the toy seller. And you'll see a lot more English text because that's also the multicultural vibe of the show. That's why there's a lot more English signage. So maybe that too is they realize like, well, shit, it just says Min-Mei everywhere. We can't call her Carol in this show.
Yeah, actually, the next scene has a guy selling Min-Mei dolls, and the booth that he's selling them in says General Products. And General Products was a proto-Gynax group founded in 82.
Oh.
And they're the ones who would eventually merge with Gynax in 90, but they came into being as like one of the first garage kit, like resin model companies.
That's exactly what happens in Otaku no Video.
Yeah.
The guys have a resin model company and are also Macross super fans. Wow.
And resin models are like, do you want to build a model car in your garage? Well, how about a model hot babe?
Except you pour the resin in here yourself and then paint it. But yeah, the Zentradi goofballs steal some toys. That's because these are the spies sent to find out about protoculture.
How do they shrink
Robotech.
themselves? Like space magic? How does that work?
It's science magic,
okay.
Bob. But it's an irreversible. It's kind of like cloning. You just get cloned into a smaller body of yourself.
I feel
in a
like
human body.
By stealing those dolls, they're making themselves more conspicuous.
Well, again, this is the comedy of this episode.
It's a very Principal Skinner and Chalmers steamed ham scene. Like I work over there at the disco.
They get a lot of comedy out of the Zentradi not understanding human culture.
I didn't know a lot of the context of these people, but when they said, disco, is that a form of torture? I was like, you have to be like enemy spies or something.
Yeah.
What planet do you come from anyway, where men play with children's toys?
We all come from right around here.
Yeah, we all work across the street, see? Right over there.
Do you mean you work at the disco?
Yeah.
We go to the disco all the time. I wonder why we've never met any of you over there before.
What is a disco, anyway?
Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we all go over there together? What a wonderful idea! Yippee! I want the big handsome one. Oh, come on with me.
Can't we talk this over?
Huh? Do you suppose this disco thing is some sort of Micronian method of torture?
We must perform our duty.
Right.
So let me get this straight. A planet where men play with toys, localized entirely within that disco. Yes.
They're basically the Three Stooges. Like their reaction to being touched, that is, again, they women don't touch. You have no physical touch in the Zentradi world. So they're freaking out.
What a bunch of weirdos.
So alien. I also like the girls on their girls' night out, like, which
they're all boy hungry.
Hey, I mean, it's wartime. You could die tomorrow. Like, get your fuck on, man. Who cares?
They're claiming they're men like I get the big one. I call him Bitey.
And so then we get the first appearance of a character that will actually be quite important, Bob.
Oh, okay.
Miria, a.k.a. Milia.
Your ego is going to become the cause of your ultimate destruction, Miria.
Just as yours caused you to be down in the Micronian Sea and made you an object for ridicule to all those whom you command, Chiron.
I can see that because you have never faced a worthy opponent, you believe you are something special. But take care, Miria, for there is one aboard that alien ship whom you cannot best.
So, an ace aboard the SDF-1. Interesting. I'd like to meet him.
So even though this is a series that is, episode by episode, you follow the story. Like there are enough narrative breadcrumbs that even I figured this out. Like, oh yeah, they're talking about Max. There was a battle before this episode where she was bested by him and she wants revenge on him. So I feel like it might be a little clumsy in terms of them just giving exposition. You remember what happened last time, don't you? Yes, I lived through it. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a bit heavy on that.
I guess it was necessary in a time where you couldn't necessarily. Not a lot of people had VCRs.
Who watched yesterday's episode? You don't know. And yeah, that is Milia, who is at this time a giant Zentradi. She will later be shrunk down as a Micronian spy. And so also at her size, her spaceship is basically an armor. It is not a full body suit. So she's fighting Max inside of that later. And Milia is a major character who, spoilers, will fall in love with Max and turn on her Zentradi people and even be the first Zentradi human marriage and have a child.
Wow. Okay, so I didn't see that coming.
No, me neither. I did not. In my first viewing, it's honestly quite clunky. She tries to assassinate him, and he's like, I could never kill you. I love you. And she's like, love? Almost a smash cut to the next scene, their wedding. Yep. And they actually use the knives that they tried to kill each other with to cut the wedding cake.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so that's for the future for Millie. So then we get to Minmay on her job. Now, I do think Minmay is not a good fit for Rick because she is too committed to her job. But I feel like the show punishes her for that. That she's like, you shouldn't be into your job. It's like, why not? She's an idol. It's her job to be an idol, and that takes long hours. Like Rick's got to be home all the time. He might die tomorrow.
It also feels fairly realistic into the grueling schedule of what being an idol is like, which is why they last like 5 years before they just marry somebody and go away.
I like that a lot. They don't hold back from that. And that, though, then we also get to see her cousin, Kaifun, who is...
Yeah, I was wondering who that was, and I'm sure there was more history to him, too.
He hates the army. He doesn't like any of Robotech. And he also is in love with Minmay, which they just treat as...
Well, who wouldn't be?
Well, and they treat him as a possible romantic partner. She's like, well, Kaifun loves me, too. I might end up with him. And... apparently in Japan, at the time, first cousin marriage wasn't regular, but it also wasn't illegal.
They had a real Shelbyville attitude back then.
Roy, being the cool bro that he is, convinces Minmay to visit Rick when she clearly is just like, oh yeah, Rick, I guess is in the hospital, huh? I'm pretty busy. He's like, I know, but maybe you'd want to visit him.
He almost died protecting you.
He gets her to commit to go, and then meanwhile, Kaifun is being just such a gross. He kisses her multiple times in the show. Like one time, he's like, "Well, we have to freak out these guys with protoculture. Kiss me." I'm like, "Yuck, yuck."
Boy, what a plan! It's like, I got it. Kiss me.
You better kiss me. Well, there's other guys here I could kiss. No, kiss me, your cousin. It's fine.
It's the only thing that makes sense anymore.
And so then Roy heads off on his way. That's when we get a little solo drive with him. That's the moment it hit me like, boy, he is dead. Like this kind of solo scene for a character that's not the main character, you may as well be putting his tombstone on.
I mean, he's driving a Jeep and might as well be dead. That's totally unsafe.
Mila's force attacks, and Roy and his friends are sent off into battle.
Hangar crew, is Commander Foker's ship ready for takeoff?
Roger, Bridge.
Is Commander Foker leading the Veritech attack squadron? Yes.
She's ready and waiting, sir. Okay, let's go.
Skull Leader takeoff preparations completed.
Your squadron is already in the air, Commander. Good hunting.
I'll be hunting for a pineapple salad.
It sounded like he said he was hunting for pineapple salad.
You must be mistaken.
No.
They have fun.
You gotta laugh. I mean, people are dying left and right in this episode.
And this is really where they're saving all their animation budget for. So our great patron, by the way, he sent us his cut of the episode, or I guess the original cut of the episode.
It's close to the original cut of the American version that you could make with the HD assets available and the original soundtrack, not the altered soundtrack that you'll hear on the Robotech you'll see on Amazon Prime.
That's the one I watched, and it was high quality, almost too high quality, where these shows, like the low resolution of an SDTV would cover some of the physicality that would distract you, but outside of the battle scenes, when they were just talking scenes, I'm like, I can sense this is just a piece of plastic with a painting on it. And that's cool, actually. It's just like I can see the brushstrokes. I can sense like this is something a human being made and photographed. But in these battle scenes, they are really impressive. And I'm sure they reuse animation like the things taking off the ship. I'm sure that's reused whenever they battle. But, you know, faking in-camera animation, things like that. You have what's called the Itano Circus, which is what Robotech pioneered, which is the missiles going in all different directions until they land on one point.
It's amazing to look at. Every single time I'm like, holy shit, this looks good.
And it's named after the animator Ichiro Itano, who I guess that was his like little trick that he did. And you would see that in everything after this. It was just like the little like trick up their sleeves. Like it's impressive every time they do it, even when it's CG.
And in Do You Remember Love, they have the ultimate one of those, which they drew a Budweiser beer can into it. Which,
that's right, yeah.
When you see it for a split second, it's all you see, and it's just like, wait. At least for me, I'm like, Budweiser beer, what the fuck? Like, and these fights always look cool. Like, they can go from being a Top Gun, just fighter jet thing, to then transforming mid-air into a big shootout of mechas, like human-shaped mechas in the sky.
And when you watch enough anime, as I have and as Henry has, you can sort of chart in your head, like, the budget for an episode. Like, okay, not a lot going on here, not a lot going on here. Oh, my God. Okay, there's a lot going on here. And it's like, okay, it's like you can kind of graph it out. Like, okay, here is a section of the episode where there's the most animation. This is what they're saving up for.
That's what I liked on Evangelion, that they made an in-universe explanation of like, this can only work for 3 minutes without the plug.
I never thought of it being an excuse for budget reasons and animation budget reasons. Wow.
Well, no, I think that too is why the Ava bosses are constantly talking about budget and money. It's because they were too in Gainax.
It was always a bummer in these shows to see like a really great scene in the beginning, and then you're like, well, there's nothing happening after this. It's going to be a bunch of like stock photos of the backs of people's heads as they talk over a table or something.
And the big Max and Mila fight is really cool looking. Like they are just shooting each other. And Max is not the ace pilot she thought she was going to face. They were telling her about Roy or Rick, not Max. Like Max is kind of third tier of those guys. And yet Max is good enough to impress her. And she's like, who is this pilot? And the chase into the SDF-1 is so cool looking.
Reminded me of Star Fox.
Yeah.
Totally. And the music too. The Robotech music reminds me of Star Fox as well. I can hear like the jabbering of the SNES characters over that.
I don't think that's an accident.
Yeah.
And the scene of Milia's ship flying through the city and it's turning around, the camera turning around her.
Yeah.
Amazing looking.
I couldn't believe that was in this TV episode.
So, though, I have to say, it's weird that Milia can cause the attack on the SDF-1 that not only kills all those people inside the Macross, but also Roy. Like, she doesn't directly kill Roy, but it is her plan that does it. They don't really hold that against her. When she turns on the Zentradi, they're like, hey, cool. You're on our side.
And one of the things that they cut out of this episode is the damage done to Roy, which made the end of this episode. I knew it was happening, but it made it inexplicable to me, like what happened to Roy. But in the Japanese version, we see that he is wounded in this battle. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that comes a little later, but it's still it's understated until the last moment. It's one of those things that like you don't think is a big deal until you get the reveal later.
But in the American version, there's no hint of that at all.
No. But it's in both American and Japanese, it's played the same as like his plane gets shot, but he then acts like everything's fine. He's like, I'm fine. I'll cover for everybody else. Like he's. Meanwhile, Max gets to have the cool shootout, which you'd also assume, like in a regular show, if you're going to kill off a character on the level of Roy, he'd go down in a blaze of glory in a big fight. He wouldn't just be shot by some random character you never even heard of. But that's why this feels more like the randomness of war, too. And the Max Milia fight is even cooler in Do You Remember Love? Like they have, when they go into the tunnel, they then have like a close quarters, like shootout in there, including where the lights go out. And so it's only lit by them firing guns. And then though, to make their relationship even weirder. So you see in here, Max doesn't know Milia is a woman. He thinks it's a man.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So he doesn't know who that is, and he doesn't know it's his bride to be. But after their first fight, she actually falls out of the suit, and he just sees this giant woman in front of her, and he's like,
I'm into this.
I'm in love. Like he probably was sad when he's like, oh, you shrank now? I fell in love with a giant.
She steps on me.
But yes, Max is asked to retreat.
Retreat?
If they continue to pursue him, it will mean that the target is not the SDF-1.
Max, the base is asking you to retreat. Right now.
What? You want me to retreat? Wait, I don't get it. What's the big idea, huh?
That bandit on your tail is trying too hard.
So what?
So they want to find out what his game is.
You got it.
Meanwhile, Min-Mei visits Rick in the hospital, which I feel like Min-Mei is supposed to be played here as selfish, but it's like she's fucking tired. She came straight from a movie set.
Yeah, I felt really bad for her. And also, this is a surprising amount of intimacy for a kid's cartoon where it's like, it's not sexual, but there was a hint of that. It's like this woman you could possibly be with is sleeping on your bed.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they're kind of going for that in a non-creepy way. You know, you're supposed to be like this poor woman, but also she's like, this woman I kind of have a thing for is in my bed. On my bed.
And I think this added voiceover from Rick here makes the scene a little more innocent.
Mm-hmm. Huh? Min-Mei, it's you!
Huh?
What are you doing here?
I hope you don't mind, but you didn't look like you were sleeping. Nice big room.
It's wonderful to see you.
I must look an absolute mess, but I came right over from the studio when I heard you were hurt.
How did you find out? There aren't very many people that know about me being laid up in the hospital.
Commander Fokker told me.
Roy Fokker?
He came by the set this afternoon to visit me. Do you mind if I sit down here? Oh, this is nice.
You look awfully tired.
I'm exhausted.
But why?
There just doesn't seem to be enough time in one day to do all the things I have to do anymore. But I'll be all right.
Would you like to just lie there and get some sleep for a little while, Min-Mei?
That would be wonderful. If I could just stay here for a little while.
Yeah. I don't understand what's happening to our world, Min-Mei, or what's going to become of us. But your safety and well-being makes it all worthwhile to me.
I believe in Macross that was just silence and him looking at her.
Yeah, I don't know if they were supposed to. I don't think they were trying to be like, yeah, she's sleeping in my bed.
No, yeah, but he probably.
But I think for a kid's cartoon, you got to be like, yes, I am still a proud and virtuous person.
And when the fight comes straight to Rick's door, that's another. If I want to compare Gundam to Macross, one thing Macross really has over Gundam or a lot of other sci-fi shows is that in the SDF-1, they basically have a city inside of it. So instead of like, say, when the Enterprise gets attacked in Star Trek, you're definitely sad that like people are getting blown up, but they're also officers of the Academy. Like they knew what they were in for. And so you're more seeing like hallways blow up and war happening. In Macross, when the fight comes to them, they're blowing up malls. Like people are dying, like civilians are dead.
In the fight in this episode, like buildings are knocked over. Mm-hmm. Big buildings are knocked over.
In Do You Remember Love, there's a scene of destruction like that where a character just gets beheaded. Like his head gets just cut off. But so the big fight ends. Milia gets chased off by Max, runs away with her tail between her legs. She won't forget this day, Micronian. Meanwhile, Roy is flying a little badly, but I'm sure he's okay.
He'll be fine.
Not decisively.
Miria will not soon forget this day, Micronian.
All right, they've had enough.
You're losing altitude, Commander Fokker. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm great, but how about Max? Did he come through okay?
He's fine. Bring your squadron back home, Commander.
Roger, SDF-1. Coming in.
Godspeed.
Oh, so here you are. I've been looking all over for you. Come on, Minmay, wake up, wake up!
What's the matter? What is it?
You're holding up production, that's what's the matter. You're the star. Without you, they can't finish the picture.
Wasn't there a young man here when you came in the room?
Are you nuts? Don't you understand? You've got a career to think about. You don't have time for that sort of thing anymore. Come on, let's go.
All right, I'm coming.
My dad was right. I should have been a CPA.
That feels like it was a dub edition.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well,
oh, I tell you, who am I talking to?
I mean, I've watched enough anime about idols, and there are manager characters like that guy in anime, but that has to become a very American Hollywood producer. Like, I should have been a CPA, like my dad told me. That felt very much like, I wonder if that was McKeck, like, venting through that character.
I mean, Minmay should realize her value to that production. Not like, I have to go there, but like, oh, they need me. Well, guess what? I want more money.
Well,
or give me the day off.
Minmay is a very agreeable young lady.
She seems very pliable.
But you see that Roy here, like a man, he's not showing how hurt he is. He's worried about Max making it through. He doesn't care about himself. And he even somehow he is able to walk off of his plane to Claudia's to sit and play a guitar until eventually he succumbs to his wounds.
I don't think you realize how terrified I get every time you fly off on a combat mission. It's almost as if you pilots think that it's all some kind of wonderful game that you're playing when you go up in those Veritechs.
It has never been a game, Claudia. Maybe someday you'll understand that.
Anyway, I've said what I had on my mind, and I promise that I'll keep my mouth shut about it in the future.
Yeesh.
Dinner's ready. What? Well, don't tell me I put you to sleep. Is anything wrong? Roy? Roy?
I'm terribly sorry, Lieutenant. We did everything we could to save him. He just lost too much blood.
Man, like smash cut to a corpse.
Yep.
I gotta say, it's not very elegant, but I do think, boy, this fucked up some kids in 1985.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think about how Optimus Prime's death fucked me up, and like I would think this would have been on the same level because if you're supposed to identify with Rick, then you're supposed to see Roy as your big brother. Like this is them taking away a very important character to you, and maybe lets little boys know that like, yeah, anyone could die in your life. It's just random.
You could die. You could die in your sleep. Well, good night. So this I didn't know what was happening because it's not very clear, and the joke in my head was just like, he's dead. It was the pineapple salad. He didn't get it in time. He died of hunger.
You should have made your dinner faster, Claudia. If only you were better at cooking.
Because it was just like it almost borders on absurd. Just like going from playing the guitar to smash cut to dead body in a hospital with like there's not even a background. It's kind of artistic, but also very surreal. Where it's just like a hospital bed in a void with characters around it.
It's a little weird.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I love melodrama. I love anime melodrama. This is almost a little too much.
But yeah, so in Macross, you can see that he has 3 bullet holes in his back, which is absolutely necessary for that scene to not be confusing. But you're not going to get away with bloody bullet holes on, and I'm shocked they were able to get this on American TV.
Yeah, I'll give them credit for that, but
so yeah,
it just shows you that toxic masculinity kills everybody.
If he'd have gone to the doctor instead of like, I made a promise to have that pineapple salad, I got to walk there and bleed to death. Like, though also that's another, if you want to pick apart the reality of this giant robot show, so he gets shot in his plane. He's bleeding. He gets off of his plane, goes to visit Claudia while still having big bloody bullet holes in his back.
He's just riding the subway, bleeding all over the place.
Does he have his backpack over him?
And I figure there's some sort of protocol, like post battle, you are looked over, like to make sure you're okay and everything, especially if you're shot at. Not like here's your backpack, dude. See you later.
But instead, he somehow teleports to Claudia's room and then dies. Like it's not the most realistically handled.
Yeah. And
but it's about the drama, not the realism.
Yeah, and the contrivance is like, oh, Roy, it'd be a shame if you died. Please don't die, Roy. No.
And then the sad shot of the pineapple salad uneaten.
No one will eat the salad.
I don't like Claudia apologizing for caring that he dies.
Yeah, this is a show from almost 40 years ago. But
I'll shut my yap about it. I'm a woman.
The women, quote unquote, know their place in this show.
They definitely do.
I mean, the gender roles were much more aggressive back then.
Yeah, look, hey, it was a different time. It was a different time. Even though we get to spend some time with Claudia's pain, and I like that they give her the time to mourn. But the main character of this show is Rick, and so what really matters at the end of the day is what Rick thinks about it.
Huh? Oh, hi, Lisa. What brings you here this fine
She's crying, you idiot.
I'm sorry, Rick. Commander Fokker is dead.
Commander Fokker is...
He's dead.
What?
He was wounded and lost too much blood.
He drops his plane.
Big brother. My big brother's dead.
Boy, what a bring down. And yeah, Big Brother, that I thought they were related based on that, but I didn't know they were translating senpai in that way.
I like, in my third viewing of it is when I realized that it's not just the obvious symbolism of he drops a toy of like childish things are to be put away now, no more times for toys, things are serious. But also it's the toy model that Roy gives him earlier in the episode.
Oh, you're right about that. Yeah, and it's like a broken machine or whatever too. So, you know.
And Rick part of his growing up is the death of Roy, and he's also going to... Quiet, Roy. But he's going to inherit Roy's ship as well, and lead the Skull Squadron moving forward.
But boy, they say dead like 5 times in this episode. That surprised me. Like when it happened once, I was like, whoa, and then it kept happening. I started laughing. Like, dead? Yes, he's dead. Dead. My big brother's dead.
and great acting on Lisa as well. Of like, you died like she's kind of stuffed up. You can tell. It sounds like she was crying before she got into the room and is barely holding it together.
Not only do we get the word dead, we get like he bled to death.
Yeah.
Amazing. 1985, everybody. I keep going on, but it's like I was alive in the 80s. This shit didn't fly.
No way. If you didn't get to kill characters on shows, only in Robotech. Like, so again, hard to overestimate the impact this type of show had.
I keep thinking now, what if Launchpad died? Uncle Scrooge, Launchpad is dead. He bled out.
I like the closest they had to that on that Darkwing episode is where in the future he thinks Gosselin is dead.
Yeah.
And he went crazy.
And I remember that series Exo Squad, which people seem to like a lot. There was a linear story they were telling, and then characters would die too. So
which is 100% a Robotech ripoff in that way. Actually, it's very similar to Robotech in that they had toys that were not for a show called Exo Squad, and they just turned them into Exo Squad toys.
That makes a lot of sense. I think we've gotten some requests for that, so maybe.
I'd be up for doing Exo Squad. I watched, my friend was a little more into it than I was, but I loved the show. It had a very similar feel to Robotech.
I think I did watch it growing up.
But yeah, so that's the end of this episode. Don't worry, guys. They'll save the day, and then the Earth is killed anyway, but then they move into outer space. And
everyone marries a huge wife.
Yeah. Well, someday we'll all get the huge wife we've been dreaming of.
I hope so.
Like Max. But thank you to Chris Duenas for picking out this episode and for his support on Patreon, just as we appreciate all our Patreon supporters. And if you're able to get at one of those open $50 levels of requests, you too could make us do a cartoon of your choice. And also this month we have another Patreon pick coming down the line.
Yes, and that's all available on our Patreon at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. You can see the entire schedule right there. So we've got a lot of great stuff coming up in November, including a Thanksgiving episode. So next week is Bob's Burgers episode and Indecent Thanksgiving Proposal. And speaking of Patreon, our entire network, the Talking Simpsons Network, is supported by patrons like you. And if you want to help support the show, it's how we live, and we want to make great podcasts for you. So please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. At the $5 level, that is our most basic level of support. You can get every episode of this podcast a week ahead of time and ad-free. And the same goes for Talking Simpsons. It's the ideal way to listen to these podcasts. There's also dozens and dozens of bonus podcasts for you to listen to, mini-series, interviews. So much is going on at the Patreon that you can only listen to if you support us at the $5 level. And at the $10 level, we have a new monthly movie podcast for you, and patrons will get to decide what movie we watch, and we give that movie the What a Cartoon treatment. We've replaced the video tier. We realize too late that people want more podcasts from us, so we're doing as much as we can for you podcast-wise.
Yeah, we had to cut the monthly video to make room for it, but it is a worthwhile cut. And at the time this goes live on Patreon, the voting is still open, so you can still vote in that poll if you're a $5 or more patron. Otherwise, though, right now, the front runner looks to be Batman Mask of the Phantasm, but we will see in the end what it ends up being. And we'll be publishing it this month in November as well, only for $10 and up patrons.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've got lots of $10 signups and upgrades too, so I figure we'll get a lot more once that episode goes live. So yes, that's another exciting thing that we're doing on the Patreon. We got another mini-series coming next year. You get to decide what that will be. Will it be King of the Hill? Will it be Mission Hill? Will it be Venture Brothers? Will it be anything else we put on the poll? Who knows? But it'll be at least 13 new podcasts you can only hear at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
And you can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. If you're watching out for updates on the Patreon and the Talking Simpsons Network, I tweet out when there's new episodes, new polls, when we announce the schedule for upcoming episodes of What a Cartoon. All of that I share on my Twitter account. So follow me on Twitter, HENEREYG.
And I'm also on Twitter. In fact, I think I'm celebrating my 10th year on Twitter this month.
Cow.
So look out. It's been 10 years of Hell World. But yes, follow me on Twitter as Bob Servo. I also have another podcast. It is called Retronauts. It's a classic gaming podcast. I've been on it for 8 years. It's been going on for 12 years. There's so many episodes happening there. Go to retronauts.com or look up Retronauts in your podcast device. I'm sure you'll find a topic that interests you. If you like it, subscribe and listen to Retronauts. It's really good, folks. And again, next week we'll see you for the Bob's Burgers episode and Indecent Thanksgiving Proposal. We'll see you then.
Life is only what we choose to make it. Let's just take it. Let us be free. We can find the glory we all dream of. And with our love, we can win. Still
said I've never seen a grown man playing with a doll before now.
Well, what's wrong with that?
You're just too old for that.
Huh? Adults don't do it?
You silly man. Only kids play with dolls.
If you're in business, you probably have a website, but can your site handle your growth? How many visitors before your site slows down or crashes? What about storage and data security? From web hosting to virtual servers, Pair Networks provides the online infrastructure you need to start, grow, and flourish. When it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. No frustrating chatbots or sitting on hold for hours. Check out pair.com today to learn more. That's PAIR.com.